Good reminder. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, I'll hand it over to you and mute myself.
Well, thanks. And Corinne, you were supposed to put, has it been 3 years? He doesn't look any older. I told Amanda the same thing. So welcome, everybody. It's so exciting to me to see all these new faces, and congratulations overall. Show of hands, anybody gone through any changes in the last couple of years? Yeah, right. Of course we have. And so, it really is about change. And even though I was with you 3 years ago, things have changed tremendously. Lily and I were just having a neat discussion about just consumers in general. I was in Target the other day, and this woman was just yelling at the cashier, and the woman in front of me was yelling at the cashier over something that really the cashier had nothing to do with. And I don't know if people are more emboldened. I don't know if the customer feels more entitled to things, but it seems like in Pack Up and Go, things are happening that way too. So I'm excited to be here. I will tell you that this is unusual. This is not the normal format when I do customer journey. I like to be in person because it's very drawable. I don't know if that's a word, that we can draw the journey as we go. I told Jordan earlier this weekend that I'm going to be fairly informal. Normally I do a formal presentation, but I really just want to talk to you this morning and get your responses. Feel free to unmute at any time and join me if you have a thought, or if I ask a question, you can put it in the chat box, whatever works for you. So I guess my first question is, I was talking about change, and things are changing. We have to accept that. As a matter of fact, I will tell you that I'm going to share my screen, that someone sent me this picture. And I think that's from a coffee shop. Do we fear change? Do we accept change? Do we love change? That's the question. Things are changing so rapidly at what you all do. I'm all about coloring outside the lines. And I think it's time that everyone at Pack Up and Go has to kind of think differently, color outside the lines, get outside your comfort zone, and maybe re-examine the customer and that customer journey. So with that in mind, one thing I am going to ask you this morning is just to sort of keep an open mind. This is the way I found this picture, and I just loved it because, first of all, I love Slinkies, but besides that, I just think that's the mindset we have to have right now. It's just an open mind. I talk a lot about being creative, about looking at things from a different perspective, and really about understanding your customer better. So with that in mind, you didn't know this, we're going to start with a challenge right off the bat. So I need you to grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, preferably a dark pen, so we're going to be able to see what you end up with. And I'm going to give you a challenge, simple challenge. As quickly as you can, would you draw a coffee cup? Would you draw a coffee cup? Doesn't have to be an artist rendering, just draw a coffee cup. Oops. Believe it or not, some reason my I can't let people in when I'm on that page. Okay. Let's see if I can share it. Okay. All right. So draw a coffee cup. All right. Let's share them. Put them up to the. Let's put them up to the camera. You got to hold it for a little bit. I got to scroll through. Make sure that we can see them. Kara, I like that. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. We have a lot of steam and a lot of. I don't know if that's whipped cream or what that is, but okay. Excellent. All right. So most of you drew a cup that looks something like this. This is an artist rendering, right? That's something like that. But when I asked you to draw a coffee cup, I also asked a recent audience, I guess about a couple weeks ago, and the guy drew this. And he said, that's my coffee cup looking down at it, right? Then I had another person who gave me this one. That's my coffee cup looking up at it, right? One of you drew something similar to the, why didn't we draw a Starbucks cup or a teacup or a cup like that? The point I'm trying to make is that, you know, we all have, I want you to accept with this open mind, especially this morning, that there's more than one right answer to every single challenge your customer brings you. You know, that there's more than one right answer. And when you think you have the right answer, you know, when you find yourself saying, I've seen this 1,000 times before, I know exactly what to do, that we set it aside and say, there's got to be a second right answer. And I think that's where we are right now with the changes that have been going on. There's definitely a second right answer for everything our customer is asking us for. You know, silently, but give yourselves a hand. I like to get the blood moving a little bit. Come on, let me see that. Yay. Okay, good, good. So let's start with a question. And my question is this: customer service, customer excellence, customer experience. What's the difference? What's the difference? So I would like you to unmute and just tell me what you think. And I'm not looking for a formal answer, just your own, in your own words, what's the difference? Anybody?
I would say maybe customer service is the way that someone gives an experience to someone, and then maybe customer experience is the way that that person like receives the service that they're giving. So like two different sides of one same experience.
Excellent, Sammy. Yes. Yeah. Who else wants to add to that? Anybody?
I think I see customer service as like a quick transactional type experience, and customer experience is more of a long-term continuous relationship between a product or company and a customer.
Absolutely, Zach. Absolutely, you're right. Customer service is very transactional. And customer experience, I just looking for a word. What is it? It's not transactional. What is it more?
Feels more personal.
Who said that?
Me.
Sydney, thank you. Yes, it feels more personal. It feels. What does that imply? It's emotional, right? Customer experience is emotional. Customer service is transactional. And here's what I know about all of you is you are amazing at customer service. That's the first step. Customer service is part of customer experience, right? But customer experience is, I define it as the ability to step back and ask ourselves, what's the difference, what's my customer's experience from the minute they make contact with us till the minute they're done? And that involves almost every one of you. And so it's called the end-to-end customer experience. Here's the thing, you know, customer experience, and I'm going to throw out one more word that I just want you to consider, and this is a brand new thought, and it's my warped mind, but I think we can go beyond customer experience even. I think that when you offer a consistent customer experience, we get to customer excellence. And so I'm not sure we ever get there in the journey, but that's the goal. It's consistent customer experience. And so I want you to understand that it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what you do at Pack Up and Go. You are all part of the end-to-end customer experience. And so we kind of have to ask ourselves, how do we shatter the stereotype of the experience the customer expects to have with us in our role? I also like to say that you're either customer facing or you support somebody who's customer facing. There's no other role. I don't care what it says in your business card. You're either customer facing or you support somebody who's customer facing. And what happens is when we realize it's about the end-to-end experience, that even if I'm sitting at a computer all day, I'm still part of that experience, and that maybe not part of customer service, but I'm part of customer experience, then you start to understand that we need to be engaged all the time. I really believe that the more engaged people are internally, the better the experience externally. And so when we're talking about the end-to-end experience, I really want to focus on one area, and this will be familiar to the people who were with me 3 years ago, but it can't go unnoticed. And it's gotta share my screen again. Sorry. There you go. So it is about customer excellence. So it's this touch point. Let me go back. I don't want to give that to you yet. In the chat box, just tell me, what is the touch point? I don't want an example of a touch point. I'd like to know what definition of touch point would be. And believe it or not, I can't get to, I don't know what's going on with my computer today. I apologize. So I'm going to have to keep unsharing.
Or Jeff, do you want me to read what people are posting in the chat while you
No,
share
I've
your
got it. I've got it now. I'm just going to drive you crazy by going back and forth. That's all. So every interaction with the client, any contact with the traveler, I love that. Every point of contact, the moment of connection. Excellent. So you got it. You know, I define it as any opportunity we have to influence the customer experience. Any opportunity we have to influence the customer experience. So based on what you do at Pack Up and Go, I would like you, and maybe Jordan, I'll get you to write for this one, all right? In the chat box, would you put down just maybe 2 touch points that you have every single day? 2 touch points that you have every day. Actually, we're recording. We'll have this, Jordan. Sydney says emails and phone calls. So any opportunity we have to influence the customer experience. Social media, okay. What are some specific touch points? Itinerary updates and pick orders, absolutely. Email, newsletter, Millie? And of course, it's going to be different for operations and it's going to be different for marketing. The envelopes, okay. Huge touch point. Facebook, Instagram, DMs, yes. Website, thanks, Corinne. Making sure our credit card works so travelers aren't charged at the hotel. Touch point. Triggering your trip is around the corner email. Excellent. Building out the trip experience, touch point. Anybody else we missed? I want you to get them out on the table. What else? What other touch points? It doesn't have to be 2. Yeah, if you can think of others. The blog, okay. Planning their trip to their request, absolutely. After trip check-in, love that. Anything else? Okay, so we're going to kind of go on a bit of a tangent, and I will come back to this in a minute, because what I would like to do next, and for those of you in marketing, I understand that you were exposed to this somewhere in the last few weeks. So I was excited to do it about this. Again, there's touch points, any opportunity we have to influence the customer experience, we'll come back to it. Though, is I'd like to start this morning by creating a customer persona. And if you're not familiar with this, all it is really a tool to better understand your customer. Usually we know the demographics, we know their age, their gender, their income. Generally, we might know the psychographics, like their values or their interests or their beliefs. But this is a little different. The customer persona, you take all of that to build a real living, breathing person. Now, I say that with a grain of salt. They're not really going to be living, breathing, but we're actually going to have a person. We're going to name that person. It's not as a collection of facts and figures. You know, we may know it's a female, age 35 to 45. I'm making this up, guys. I don't know, but with 2.5 kids, you take all that information and you roll it up to say that she's a working mom. She's married for 8 years. Tries hard to get away with her partner once a year, and so what she does with us is incredibly important. That's the idea of the customer persona. So with that in mind, what I'd like you to do, I'd like all of you, if you have your camera, because I'm going to put you in breakouts and you need this information. If you can take a picture of that slide. So we're going to create a buyer persona, and I'm going to put you into 6 different groups just randomly. I didn't want to do it by department because, by the way, each department will have their own not only touch points, but you could develop your own buyer persona based on the department as well. Instead, we're trying to do this for the entire organization. So that's why I'm going to mix you up. And I'm going to, what I'll do is I'll put you into the breakouts, and I'm hoping everybody got a picture of that. I'll put you in the breakouts, and then I will come by and tell you which one of those 6 things that your group will be working on. Fair? Any questions or comments? All right. I'll see you in a minute. For those of you still here, did you get a invitation, Jasmine? Jen?
We finished.
You get a star. We're
Thank
going to
you.
give people a few more minutes.
Okay. I clearly didn't get your art skills with my coffee mug.
That's what I would have drawn. That looks like a beer stein, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you see my face back there?
You guys were professional information, right?
We didn't even know that you could do breakout rooms like that, Dad. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really? You can do them random, or you can set them up beforehand with who you want in the breakouts. It's a pain, though. You have, every time I come back into the main room, I don't know why I'm muted. It tells me it's being recorded, and then takes me a second to get back into the next breakout. So.
Right. I think it follows you, though, the recording. I think whichever room you pop into, it records.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay.
I don't know.
So who of this group is the newest?
Jasmine.
Welcome, Jasmine. Are you local?
Yes, I'm in Pittsburgh.
Okay. I should look back.
Jasmine started as an intern with us, actually, though, a few years ago.
I was about to say
Oh,
it might
cool.
be depending.
Yeah, so maybe Courtney, realistically.
That's right. And Courtney, are you in Pittsburgh as well?
I'm not. I'm in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Bentonville. I hate to admit, and Jordan will tell you that I am obsessed with HGTV, and that, you know, there's one that's based in Bentonville. So.
I just walked past they're filming season 3 right now, and I just walked past one of those houses the other day.
Oh, really? Okay.
So if you see me in the background, they were filming.
Would you send me your autograph? No.
Absolutely.
If you're in the background, you never know. So. And Zach, I think you are local, right?
I am in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, good. All right, I'm going to give them a 1-minute warning.
I tried to print those pages this morning, and ever since then my printer is like so mad at me.
I was like, you know, I was living at my parents for such a long time. I just used all of their things. So I was like always using their printer. When I moved here and Lily said to print those things, I was like, oh, I don't have a printer.
The other day, my mom asked me if I wanted my grandma's printer, and I was like, why would I want a printer? I don't need that. And now I could have printed these.
I specifically bought one to print out return labels.
So Zach, your grandmother called me and asked me to give you something to print, so just to prove to you needed it.
For real.
All right, the other should be back momentarily. Sydney's cheering that she's back. Yay! All right, I think we got everybody. Everybody's back. Good. Here's the thing, and I'm going to admit something to all of you. I have no clue now how to debrief this without making it a mess, except that we're going to go around and maybe I could ask somebody, Jordan, maybe, or somebody to just kind of keep track of some of the characteristics in each area. Or if there's a way to share your screen and actually put them up on the screen, that would even be better. All right, so let's start with the personal info group. Lily, I know that you seem to be the scribe. I'm not sure you want to be the spokesperson. So
we actually designated Kara as our scribe and spokesperson.
All right, perfect, Kara. Why don't you walk
cool, yeah.
through it?
So yeah, I was with Sammy, Amber, and Lillian, and for the personal info, and we came up with age was in their 30s. The gender is primarily female. For children, we put that yes, they have children, but they don't necessarily take a pack up and go trip with their children. The marital status is they usually are a couple, so not necessarily married, but in some type of partnership. The location is that they live in the suburbs, so they're primarily suburban. For income, we have that they are primarily upper middle class, and the education, we came up with that they have some type of education, so we put bachelor degree for undergrad.
Okay. Excellent. Let me put you on the spot for a second, Kara, or maybe your teammates can answer too. But you were talking about the fact that they are in partnership, and typically, I assume they're traveling with their partner.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So in this exercise, it's not uncommon to end up with two personas when that happens. So we just FYI, we may end up there based on that. So and maybe we separate them. But I'm assuming that you said gender female because that's the person in the relationship who's actually making the reservation or dealing with pack up and go. Is that true?
Yes.
In general. Okay, excellent. Thank you. And let me ask you, let me open it up to everyone. I'm sorry, can you repeat
your
that?
audio was sort of pixelated as you said that.
I was saying yes to that, but also we've selected female because we just get a lot of like female like girls trips, like people going with their friends or their sisters, more predominantly over seeing more men traveling.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Amber. And I'll open up to anybody. Is there anything missing there that you feel, personal information? Going once, going twice. All right, let's move on to the second group. The second group is professional info. I have, Jordan was taking notes, but do we have a spokesperson?
I can go if you guys want. So we decided, actually, if somebody else in the group has it written down, that way I can keep typing it.
I have it written down.
Cool.
Okay, so we decided that the job title was a nurse working in a larger hospital. That she's been a nurse for about 5 to 7 years in her role. And what's next? Her special skills. We said that she puts others first. So the reason maybe that she signed up is she needs kind of a me trip. She balances her work and family life. So we also thought that she had kids that probably weren't going to go on the trip with her. She's usually the planner in her friend group. So this is kind of a change of pace for her. In her job, she works non-traditional hours. It's hectic, it's high stress. But the tools that she relies on, she's very compassionate. She relies a lot on her knowledge that she's learned on the job and in school. And then she also uses patient management materials that they provide for her at the hospital. We decided that she probably is a supervisor and supervises other nurses now that she's been in her field for a little bit. And the way that her success is managed is by a few different ways. The health of her patients, her patient surveys and feedback, and then probably just what her mentors and supervisors say about her as well. Oh, and promotions, we talked about that.
I love this. I love it because most of you are sitting there going, what the heck? How come you picked a nurse, right? That's what this is all about. It's not real in that, you know, not every one of your customers is a nurse, but the point is that this is just a general sort of thinking about what would our customer do professionally in general. So thank you for that. That's great.
Can I think that is, sorry, really quickly. When we were talking about the personal info in group one, we were saying that, you know, because we were imagining sort of this suburban traveler, we actually said, you know, we feel like a lot of their occupation is probably something that is sort of within like a cultural norm, if that makes sense. And like a lot of, and so I think a nurse falls into that category pretty squarely, like a sort of predictable profession that is reliable and consistent and sort of lends itself to that, the personal info that we came up with. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And we said, you know, this person's probably like a planner in their everyday life and sort of, you know, in charge of the household and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, that's great. And Jordan highlighted planner in her friend group. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the one who everybody said, you do it. We'll go, but you do it. So that's great. Excellent. Anybody want to add anything to the professional? All right, let's move on to number 3, which is values and fears. I saw Juliana was taking notes, so maybe you could be our spokesperson.
Definitely. So we started with what do they value in their personal and professional life? And the main thing that we said was a balance of the two. So that kind of work-life balance, which means that they kind of take the time every year, they scheduled their time off far in advance, and they really prioritize taking a trip at least once a year. And then the other thing that they also value is their relationships, whether that is friends, if it's a partner, a romantic relationship, or it's their family. And we saw those two things merging and saw that a lot of our travelers, you know, have that yearly like big trip that's a tradition that they do once a year, like their girls trip or their anniversary trip, something like that. And then in terms of things that they're looking for when considering this product, our simple way of looking at it was just bang for your buck. And the two components of that we came up with were the surprise element and then the personalization element. So I think looking for something that's cooler and trendier and not as traditional as like a old school travel agency. And then another part that we kind of brought up with like the age of the demographic would be almost like the clout or the do it for the gram component of how is this trip going to make me look when I'm posting pictures of it? can I take a cool video of opening my envelope? What will this, product like give me that's really unique that I can kind of post about? So kind of having that association of like your personality being cool because the product that you're using is also cool and unique. And then in terms of objections, the main one that came to mind was just that their personal knowledge might kind of overshadow their desire to like pay for someone to plan a trip. And then I guess another part of that would be like if they're more of a controlling person who doesn't really want to give up their control to somebody else or to a team. And then what drives their decision-making process, we said a mix of social media and then real world groups and real world like interactions. So if you're seeing good reviews or looking at our account and looking at experiences that really appeal to you, or even just like in-person word of mouth, as well as kind of time is a factor. So I think with this persona, she's a nurse, she's really, really busy and just wants to go somewhere and doesn't want to have to, put in that time herself when she's already so busy. So that was another driving factor that we came up with.
Excellent. For those of you who were with me 3 years ago and we did DISC, which we hope to get to, but I'm not sure we'll get there today. This really plays into that. What is their style? You already mentioned if they're controlling, they're probably not your customer. So that's one of the styles gone. But with the style that comes to mind is I, which won't mean a lot to all of you, but that's definitely what I am. It's about that do it for the gram. I like that, or the cloud uniqueness. Sure, make me look great. Plus, it's the fact that make me look great with my friends if I'm the one planning it for a friend's trip. So, excellent. Well, do you have anything to add to that? Values and fears? I'm just curious.
The idea of like doing it for the gram, we talked about that as well, because we were saying, especially if you do live in a suburban community and in sort of a traditional career, it can be really exciting to find ways to differentiate yourself and stand out among your friend group and have like that interesting like conversation piece and experience sort of in your social toolkit, if you will.
What I haven't heard is that, and this is my assumption, and maybe wrongly, is that you have a lot of first-time travelers. Is that not true?
We definitely do. We do have novice travelers, but I don't think they're the majority of our travelers.
Okay.
So I don't think they are the typical traveler for Pack Up and Go.
And I want to mention, I'm backtracking, but Lily asked a question right when I got to the group number one. Are we talking about our existing customer? Are we talking about the ideal customer? And you could probably do this, and I don't think it's going to be much different. Ideally they wouldn't, they would give us control, they wouldn't care, those kinds of things, but we're going to base this all on reality. So, all right, great. Anybody want to add anything to values and fears? All right, let's go on to group number 4, goals and challenges. And I had Corinne, I think you were doing that, or?
Yes, and I can say them out loud or I can pop them in the notes. We wrote them down. Jordan, do you have a preference?
Sure, write them down as you did.
Okay. So we took out the word career and just focused on their personal goals here. This persona might be traveling for a couple of reasons. So her personal goals are that she's family oriented. She wants to have a unique experience and she wants to travel to new places and experience unexpected things. Then how do they prioritize those goals? And we broke this kind of into the specific types of trips that this person might go on with us. So if it is a couples trip, a romantic trip, or a honeymoon trip, they're going to be prioritizing differently than if they're going on a different type of trip. So we were brainstorming what do people on that type of trip want to do? Typically spas, food and dining experiences, zoos and aquariums, and experiences that they can do together. With baby moons, frequently looking for relaxation, or the complete opposite, which is like really going hard before the baby comes. What challenges impact achieving these goals? So from a customer perspective, that they don't have any control of the trip or their pre-planned activities, that they have an inability to effectively communicate on the pre-trip survey, or that they have small budgets that do not allow us to, cover the amount of experience that they want. So how can we help? This is kind of two-pronged. The first is that on our back end, we can analyze past survey data to better understand our customer and figure out how we can continue to tailor our pre-trip survey to capture that information. But then on the trip planning side, reaching out to ask if they want to increase their budgets to cover some of these costs that may be associated with trips. And then the last was, what questions do they ask when seeking solutions to these challenges? And what questions do they ask? We kind of focus, because I think we mostly hear about these challenges after the experience, when it's just a post-trip kind of review. So we kind of flipped it and thought about what challenges can we ask. So reaching out more frequently to ask if they're comfortable traveling a longer distance, if we think that's going to be a better destination, or if they'd like to add more budgets. And then again, internally, we can reflect what are our most common complaints or issues, and how can we address them prior to them signing up or prior to that departure.
Excellent. So you're talking about anticipating basically what they're going to ask? Is that, am I saying that right?
Yes, and that's I think what we're seeing now is the consumers are changing and expectations are changing. We are just trying to be as agile as possible to get ahead of those needs, so that they don't become complaints.
Right. So the operative word through all of these that I'm getting as an outsider looking in is the loss of control, or some kind of control. And that may be something I'm just suggesting that you want to discuss, down the road, that, is there a way to give them more of a sense of control when we're not really giving up control? So just something to think about, if that truly is what the thread through all of these. All right, good. Anybody want to add something to personal goals and challenges? All right, next is where are they? And that's number 5, and I think that was Katie.
Yeah, so I have some notes. So Sydney, Maria, if I missed anything, jump in, please. So we first talked about some where do they get their info? So from that, I think we do get a lot of friends and family referrals, and people just getting the word of mouth from Pack Up and Go. So I think they first get it from people they trust. And then I do think they take it a step further in researching on their own to kind of validate the purchase and putting their trust into us. Then it's how do they communicate? And I think the top ones are form submissions when they fill out our survey. And then a little bit more personal is the emails, phone calls, and some text messages to our CX team. Let's see. The media consumption, or like what media do they consume? We put social media, television, podcast, and blogs as the top choices. And let's see, associations that they would be involved with, being schools or alumni associations. That kind of plays well with our bachelor degree persona. We also think like outdoor exploration could be a fun association that they're associated with that really plays well into our outdoor trip type. For social media, they usually go on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And do they attend events and conferences? Yes, I think it plays well with our picks or our staycations. And how do they spend their days? We said usually working, and then either exploring on their own or daydreaming about exploring someday soon. And last but not least, hobbies. We think they're pretty well-rounded, like all of us. So like any outdoor activities like hiking or kayaking, or exploring their local scenes with like history tours or just city tours, food tours, all the tours. And reading and concerts as well. So reading about destinations or just reading on their own during trips themselves, and going to different concerts or live events.
Excellent. It's interesting to me. I've done this exercise with another group, and where are they? They actually pinpointed a location versus the way you approach it. So that's interesting. That's great. So a nurse in Nantucket. Anyway, making that up. Okay, let's go on. Jordan, you had a point?
I was gonna say, well, I would say usually they're like from a Midwestern small city would be my like specific location, but I also put two things in parentheses here that your group didn't call out that I was just thinking we probably would be important. I think a lot of our travelers get their information from our social media pages. I think their personal research often consists of that, because we see a lot, we have such a big social media following, and then those people usually very slowly convert to customers. And then also in terms of communications, I just wanted to add DMs, because right before we got on this call, Millie was just telling us about some customers who were DMing us with questions.
And oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say one other thing that I was thinking about with how they spend their days. I think a lot of our customers, their free time is very kid-centric or very centered around their family, or going to their kids' school events, or planning birthday parties, or things like that. I think a lot of their free time goes to their family obligations, which is, I think, why they put a lot of emotional value on their trip, which is their sort of the way that they can live out the dreams about exploring that that Group 5 called out here.
Cool. Anybody else? Anything else?
I did have
right.
social media written down. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Don't be sorry.
I did have social media written down for the first question. I believe we talked about that. And I also wanted to add for the last question with hobbies, we talked about eating and drinking as a big one, because a lot of people in the surveys say that they prioritize that.
Excellent. So we've got a nurse who eats a lot and drinks a lot. I'm liking this. This is interesting. Okay. Great. All right. Last group is negative info. I can't remember. Oh, Amanda, I think, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay.
So I personally thought of it, I don't think there's actually any individual travelers we don't want, but it's more about having it be the right situation or experience that they're looking for at the time. And that's something that we're trying to kind of pinpoint a little bit more solidly as a company. For example, like all-inclusive trips, we're not looking to book. Requests that would be for more of a standard travel agency if they want to go somewhere specific. Elopements and weddings and those big events that they would like us to plan. That's not really what we're kind of trying to do anymore. And then obviously travelers that just don't have as much of an open mind, that goes along with the giving us the control again as well. And then we don't not want inexperienced travelers, and we definitely have like a first-time traveler guide, but it's definitely, those are a little bit more difficult just because we have to handhold them a little bit more. So our preferred traveler is definitely a little bit more experienced and can handle themselves while they're traveling.
Excellent. Any other negatives?
You have to mention the beer budget with champagne taste.
Yes.
Just putting it out there.
Right. What? Let me put you on the spot, Jasmine. Why do you think that's who you're attracting?
I don't think that's who we're attracting, because we've had a lot of guests post the right budget for when booking a pack up and go trip. I just think it's a lot of like are repeat customers that believe that what they purchased in 2017 with their budget is going to work with us in 2021, especially after everything that's occurring. So I just think people need to have a realistic goal of how much is really needed to spend, because $1,000 on a road trip is very doable, but when you're trying to do a flight trip for a weekend, it's really not that doable. So yeah, that's just the problems.
Not so much for the budget, but for the first part of that, with like the specific requests and things like that. I think it might be because our trip type is very much for like the dreamer or the idealist, or somebody who's like really thinking big, especially because they don't have a hand in it. So I think sometimes they think there's no limit, there's so many things that they can do with that.
I think also we want travelers who are tech savvy, who are familiar with using Uber and Lyft and know how to use QR codes and are familiar and comfortable with getting boarding passes on their phone. So I guess in terms of like negative info, not having travelers that are like first timers using apps like that.
So if you'll forgive me as an outsider looking in, I would think it would be your job, meaning pack up and go, to educate me. So none of you will remember this because you're all too young, but there used to be a retailer here in Pittsburgh called Sims. And Sims was a discount clothing store. And their motto was, an educated consumer is our best customer, right? And so their advertising, their promotion was all about, we'll educate you. You come in, we'll educate you on the clothes buying experience. So I'm just throwing that out again, just something to think about is, are there opportunities here to educate our customer, so that those things, Millie, that you just mentioned, especially, that they'll be aware of, or how to do that. So just again, I'm just trying to throw things out for you to think about. All right. Anybody want to add anything to any of these? Lily, yeah, could be cool to create a guide. That would be great. So what do we do with it? I have no clue. Because this could take another hour, and I don't want to do that. We want to get into another area. We always want to get into the customer journey. But suggestions, I'm going to look to Lily, how you could continue this discussion. And eventually, I'd love for you to come up with a name, a profile that's not as in-depth as all those notes, basically taking the highlights. Is there an opportunity to do that, Jordan or Lily?
We can do this in our Friday wrap up this week. Revisit it and hammer out some details. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that even though we are broken into groups, all of these came together to form a really cohesive person. And so it is reassuring to me that we all sort of see our travelers in a similar way.
Yeah. Any other comments on that, on the exercise and how it might help? Anybody? Okay. All right. So let's assume we have this persona, this nurse, and let's talk about the journey that someone takes from beginning to end, from the minute we make contact to the minute we're done. Remember, that's the customer experience. I'm going to share my screen again just to kind of walk you through this. So what's a customer experience journey mapping? It's just a visual representation of the steps the customer has to take with you and the emotions and experiences they have during those steps. See, if we understand how they're feeling at each one, and we can call them steps, we can call them touch points, but if we understand how they're feeling at each of those steps, then we can better understand, one, our customer, but two, the challenges they face and how we can tackle them. So just to give you an overview, typically with customer experience mapping, there are four what I call info layers, things that you kind of need to know. There's CX. CX is short form for customer experience. Then there's what I call front stage, there's backstage, and then there's the systems and processes. Very quickly, CX really has 3 different layers to it. 1 is the stages. So 2 is customer activities and situations, and 3 is emotions. So that's where we're going to focus really on the customer experience. But just so you understand the others, front stage is what I refer to kind of like a play. I think that's how's the customer experiencing or interacting with your service or product. It's physical people and it's digital. So what I'm trying to show you, I guess, is that with customer experience journey mapping, it's not a be all and end all. Every one of your departments could do this for your own, for any given customer. And then it can go as deep as you like, as you want to get, basically. Backstage and the next 2, backstage and systems processes, are that's kind of below the visibility line, as I like to call it. It's basically what we're going to look at, though, is the CX. It's really the stages or the touch points, customer activities. What do they do in those stages, and the emotions. All right, did we send this out, Lily? All right, did you all get this?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, so if you printed it, which I hope you did, I'd like you to kind of go through this. So again, how we do this would be interesting virtually, because what do we think is one of the first, and by the way, you probably should have printed multiples, because 6 boxes are not going to be enough. You have a longer list of touch points, I think, than just 6. But if you would just sort of number them at the top, 1 through 6, that's the steps. And let's jump down to the touch points, because you mentioned them all, those touch points already.
Jeff, if you want, I can share my screen and put in text boxes and fill it in as we go, if that's helpful.
Excellent. Let's do that. Hold on one sec. If I could get out of sharing, I would do that. Interesting. There we go. Okay. So in this exercise, what we're trying to do is not only are we trying to identify the touch points, we're trying to kind of put them in order. Right? We can move them around as we go, but what would you say is the first touch point for a customer?
I would say discovering us. So whether that's from a friend or family or social media.
Okay, let me just caution you that a touch point is something that you can control, right? So we can't really control that, as you'll see as we go through this journey. So we're going to talk about things that are in our control. I always like to say, when we look at that at touch points, there are 3 things, 3 questions we should ask ourselves. Is it in our control? Is it, can we influence it? In other words, we might have to collaborate with somebody else, or we might have to do something to influence it, or is it out of our control? And if it's out of our control, then it really isn't a touch point. Fair enough? So what would the discovery really wouldn't be a touch point, unless, how else are they discovering us, right? So what would the first touch point be?
I was going to say when travelers reach out, like, and send a DM or send an email saying, how does this work? So they've already discovered us, but now they want more information before they consider if they're going to sign up or not.
Okay.
I would say seeing us on social media, or learning more about the brand on social media.
I think that's going to happen before they reach out. Right, they do still have to discover you, and that's where I was trying to lead Jordan, but it didn't work. Right, it's not going to be friends and family, but it could be a website. It's probably digital, right? Social media, website. Somehow they do discover you, but there's something we can control. And then to Juliana's point, obviously, now they reach out. What's next? Well, if they're reaching out, who are they talking to?
The CX team.
Okay. So that's another touch point. And you can disagree with me or disagree as we go. All right. So now they've talked to somebody on the CX team. What's the next touch point for them or for us?
They talk to CX or marketing. Sorry, marketing. That's right. If it's social media.
And by the way, it's always like pulling teeth, so it's okay. It's tough to grasp this until we get into this. But
I guess I have a question. Is it supposed to be chronological? Because I feel like a next different step would be that they use our, they go and fill out the survey, but I do feel like a lot of people like reach out and ask questions and then keep scrolling through on Instagram and then we'll see an ad. And there's like a little bit more of that social media, like exploring phase before maybe they commit. But I feel like maybe that's already covered in seeing us on the web or seeing us on social media.
so Lily, maybe we could combine that. I think it actually goes to the one before, does it not, or no? Oh, no, that's it. Okay. What's next? Just name a touch point. We can move it around. There's one. Sign up for the trip. Again, I ask, is that a touch point you can control?
Well, we can control their experience with the pre-trip survey.
Okay. Millie, you were going to say something?
I wrote in the chat, maybe after they reach out, say, how does this work? They read reviews on our website or sign up for our email newsletter.
Okay. All right, so they complete the pre-trip survey. They book their trip. What are some other touch points? What's next?
Our confirmation emails, like that your order's been received, and then any follow-up emails from maybe a trip planner if they want to confirm, like, do you want to do multi-destination, something like that.
Absolutely.
If a traveler has like an update to their survey or a question, they might reach out to either change like a previously traveled destination or a place to avoid, or maybe provide something. If they booked their trip like 6 months ago, they might have something new to add for like a KTN, or like they want to take something off or add something.
Thank you, Tom.
And then I feel like this is pretty obvious, but like once they're on their trip, obviously, like when we give them information about like their boarding passes or like their activities and stuff that they're going on the trip, just like any communications we have with them.
Okay.
And then in between there would be getting the envelope.
Yeah, getting the envelope has to be a huge deal. Great touch point.
Or also now we're sending out emails to certain travelers going to certain destinations that have like specific COVID related restrictions, just saying you may need proof of vaccination to dine at one of your restaurants, and then they'll have to respond back saying they are or are not vaccinated, and then we can go from there with providing them with more resources or changing an activity if needed.
Also, their pre-trip emails, the one that we trigger when we finish planning the trip, as well as their 1 week and weather updates.
What else?
We send them an email on their trip to remind them to check in for their flight home.
Okay.
And then a post-trip survey as well.
And post-trip survey. Excellent. All right, do we feel comfortable that those 8, even though the wording might not be exact, but those 8 are really the main 8 touch points in the customer journey? Are we missing something?
I would say too, in the post-trip survey email, there's like 3 touch points. So it's filling out the survey, sending photos, and then also joining Packed Up and Went, which is our alumni Facebook group, and to continue people to like restart the CX journey and to sign up for another trip.
Yeah, Packed Up and Went is a great touch point too. Probably its own.
I love that, by the way, Pack Up and Went. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to number 1, which is, seeing the Pack Up and Go on social media, on websites. What can we think of? What are the customer thoughts at that point? What are they thinking? Let me pick on some people I haven't heard from yet. So, Carl, how about you? What do you think the customer's thinking at that point?
I have to unmute. I always forget to do that.
No, just don't. It's better if we just see your lips move. No, I'm kidding.
Excitement, waiting for more information, a lot of anticipation at that stage. Anticipating what's next.
Love that. Excellent. Gina, how about you?
I think a lot of them feel nervous. I know that a lot of our travelers can be type A, but they're letting go and letting us do the work. So.
Okay. Excellent. Anybody want to add to anything to that?
Yes, I think that when people are possibly hearing about Pack Up and Go for the first time, there's a question of whether or not we are real. So a lot of what we try to do on the website and social media is add legitimacy.
So can we just say skepticism?
Sure.
They're skeptical if you're real, if it's going to be, if this exists, if it's fun. Okay.
I think skepticism is good all around because people, at least like when I tell people about Pack Up and Go, it's always like, oh my God, wait, would I want to do that? So I think skepticism is definitely an emotion that happens.
So you can see that there's a fine line between thoughts and emotions, but the overall emotion that I think we can put there is nervousness, correct? They're just, or anxiousness. What would the word be if we only had one?
I also feel like people are like shocked when they hear about it. Like whenever I tell people like, oh yeah, it's a surprise trip and you don't find out where you're going till you leave, they're like shocked that like even exists depending on the person that you're talking to.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're excited, nervous and excited.
Okay. So let's move those down to the emotion. And what we're not going to talk about today are improvement opportunities, but here's a great opportunity for you, again, after you do your persona, to go through each of these touch points and talk about opportunities to improve. And keep in mind that every touch point has to have an owner or multiple owners. If somebody doesn't own it, then nothing's going to happen. But jumping ahead, the way this sort of all comes together is when you do the exercise and you look at improvements for each of the touch points. Imagine if we just did one little improvement for each of the 8 touch points, right? How would that change the external experience? Well, it would be huge. So that's what we're looking at to eventually do with this. So we're not going to do the improvement opportunities right now, only because of timing. So if we have time at the end, we'll get to it. So let's go on to the next one. Outreach via DM, email, phone to get more info, ask questions. What are they thinking at that point?
At that point, they're probably thinking that they want to sign up for a trip, but want to alleviate some concerns or possible confusion, uncertainty before they decide to spend that money.
Absolutely. Excellent. What else? What else are they thinking?
They could also be kind of like testing our customer service, our customer experience, and seeing like, oh, I wonder how responsive they're going to be. I wonder like what their tone is going to be when they answer my questions.
I think this might be more under the when they're completing the pre-trip survey. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but maybe it's starting here. Is that travelers are maybe starting to imagine where they could go, and there's like a very like creative and whimsical feeling where they're like, maybe I'll end up in New Orleans or what, you know, there's the possibility of it.
Right. Then you have to have the negative side of that too. And they're saying, well, what if? I don't know, what if they send me to, I'm not going to put in the city names, but right.
All the
So
people
yeah.
and went worried about going to Austin.
Lily, piggybacking off of that, I think they're also, how can I implement this into my own life? Like, oh, instead of, you know, like us planning our girls trip, why don't we have like Pack Up and Go plan our girls trip? Or we also get those messages that's like, hey, can you plan a trip like this? Or like, hey, we want to do a road trip to South Dakota. Can you plan it? So I think it's like how they're implementing, you know, Pack Up and Go into their own life or into their own travel plans.
Excellent. Anything else? Any other thoughts? What are their emotions at this point? Are they different from the first?
I feel like this is where it becomes a little bit more like, I don't know if emotions could be more action oriented, but this is where like, okay, what are the logistics? It's more of like a planning mindset, but that's maybe a customer thought, not an emotion.
It's also where it becomes more real, right? They're starting to get the information they need. I'm likening it to, Jordan will know that my wife and I just booked a huge trip for next year. Not a surprise trip, but it's a big anniversary of ours. I'm thinking through the steps, and it was a big decision for us. So, you know, that part when reaching out via email and phone and answering our questions, I think part of that is, you know, am I satisfied with the answers? Right? Am I happy with what they're telling me? Does it solve my challenges? So I'm not sure that's emotions, but what is the emotion that goes with that? Anybody? Relief? I don't know if that's an emotion.
They could be feeling relieved that they found someone who could plan their honeymoon or mini moon or baby moon.
Right, right.
I don't know if this is like the right chronological order, but we do get people who are like upset with their destination choice.
Mm-hmm. So save that, I think, until they open the envelope, right?
Mm.
Is that what would that be appropriate, Katie? Okay. All right, let's go on. So the next one, talk to the CX team, phone, email, marketing, social media, follow on social media. My eyes are going. So, yeah, thank you. Look at that. Somehow I said that in my glasses. It made it get bigger. Follow on social media a while longer before committing. So these are very closely tied together, right?
Yeah, but I think at this point it comes down to more logistics and money. I think this is like the customer thought here would be like, can I afford this? How can I save for this?
Yeah. Can I afford it?
I feel
When
like
can
at
I
this
take the
stage-
time off? Sorry, Maria.
That's good. I feel like at this stage, I was just gonna say they're kind of learning more about Pack Up and Go. So I guess the thoughts are like just becoming more knowledgeable about what it is.
So I want to just avoid what they're doing versus what they're thinking. So thinking would be, I need to learn more, or I have learned more, whatever that, what are they thinking? So I need more information, okay.
I think at this point, from when I would answer hello calls, this is when they start to like become impressed with us. They're like, oh, you do have the answers to the questions that I'm asking.
Excellent. It may just not be on Sunday morning when they're DMing you, right? And what are their emotions at this point?
I think
for
building
both.
off. Oh, go ahead, Corinne.
Corinne?
For both this one and the last one, I think they're feeling hopeful that not only do we have the answer to their question, but that it's the answer that they want.
Right.
And to Amanda's point, I was going to say they might be feeling a little bit more trusting if they're impressed kind of with the feedback and the answers that they're getting.
Excellent. I'm wondering, I feel like read reviews, sign up for the newsletter is not in the right place as far as chronological order.
I sort of think it goes right with the one right before it.
Yeah.
It's sort of in that same vein.
Lily, I'm going to take you on the road with me. You do this well. All right, let's talk about the trip survey. When they, I'm just curious, when they complete this, who is it? What title in the organization or person? Who owns this touch point?
Travel planners.
Hoping you weren't going to answer for them. Thanks. I'm kidding. So I don't think I have the title travel planner. So who is that? Somebody speak up. Who are you? Uh-huh.
I am a travel planner.
We all stayed quiet. Why? What's coming next?
But I was going to put, what are your emotions? So no. So if you're a travel planner, my question is, what's the customer thinking at this point? What are their thoughts as they complete the pre-trip survey? Jasmine, we'll start with you.
Jasmine P, I think he was calling for you first. No,
Not yet. Not yet.
Honestly, I feel like they might be probably, it's either between borderline of anxious or excited, because depending on how detailed, yeah, there you go, nearsighted. Depending how detailed the trip survey is, it'll be a lot of a great help to us.
So those are emotions. We'll put those down in emotions. What are they thinking? Jasmine P, how's that?
I feel like some people think that we can give them exactly everything that they're asking for, even if it's with these outrageous requests. And it's not really always feasible, but I feel like they think that they're gonna get it just because they're asking for it and letting us know.
Excellent. Yeah. If you're asking me to write it down, then it's going to happen. Okay.
I think they're also thinking, does my survey reflect my travel style?
Wow. Excellent.
I think sometimes some travelers fill out their survey with a destination in mind. And so they'll like make it really specific. Yeah, or like Zach just said, I hope they send me to a resort in Hawaii.
What else do they think? Anything?
I
All right,
think
and then go ahead, Katie.
No, I was just thinking like in the same vein as thinking back to the traveler journey, they see us as this like whimsical travel agency. So I think in this stage, they're thinking of how can I get outside of my comfort zone even more. So people that never bought hiking shoes probably put hiking and could affect their trip satisfaction later on.
Great. Anything to add? All right, and then there's
the customer thoughts, but one thing that I always find interesting that I know a lot of dating apps have the same problem where there's sometimes a discrepancy between what people think they want and what they actually want. And so I know that plays into dating profiles a lot. And I think we get that too, where some people, see themselves as wanting to always be on the go and do a lot of things, and maybe they actually want a more relaxing vacation. So I think that's something that we might think about more than the customer when they're signing up. But
while we're waiting, I think we might have also missed one on the last category that that's kind of where like the do it for the gram clout kind of plays in, where they're starting to think of what they get to post once they book this.
do you think that's in the customer thoughts when they're completing the pre-trip survey or getting ready to sign up?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe both.
I apologize, everyone. That's the first time in 2 years that that's happened to me. So, can you hear me okay? Maybe not.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Now you're just ignoring me. That's okay, though. So, thanks, Zach. All right. All right, so the next one is receive the order confirmation email. Emails from the travel planners with questions about their trip. What are they thinking now?
I think a big one is leading back to, it could be an emotion too, but the anticipation of it, of like, okay, now what? Like, it's out in the ether. This is like this random person's planning it, but like, what do I pack? Where am I going? How do I best prepare?
Right, I suggest they might be thinking, wow, this is real now. This is happening, right? All right, I don't want to belabor it. We can always come back. All right, so the next one, long one, email, call CX team or DM on social to add details about the trip, ask questions, email from ops, pre-trip emails, trip around the corner 1 week. What are they thinking?
I feel like this is when they start to be like, did I miss things? Can I give them more details? Kind of similar to the one before.
Mm-hmm. What else?
I feel like it's also a time where customers or travelers are like, wow, they are so proactive with like reaching out about certain things like needing vaccination proof or reminding about their upcoming trip in a couple of weeks and then the 1 week email. So it's them becoming more confident with us and thinking that their trip is going to go well.
I'm not sure if this would go in this one or the next one because it's kind of takes place before the envelope, but we know that, you know, our travelers get super excited about receiving the physical envelope. So maybe it's some like nerves or anxious thoughts of if they're actually going to receive their physical envelope in time.
Excellent, right.
I think between this column and the next one is where they really start guessing where they're going to go.
Okay. In the essence of time, we're going to keep going. All right, so now they get the envelope, right? Weather forecast update, opening their envelope, boarding passes. What are they thinking? Jen, we haven't heard from you for a while.
They are thinking that they're thinking whether or not the destination matched their survey preferences.
Yeah. Either thinking great or WTF, right? What else? Anybody?
I feel like this is kind of where they're like measuring their like comparison to their expectations, if that makes sense. So like comparing it between what they thought that their trip was going to be and what their trip actually is.
Following up with Sammy, I think this is very much when they open their envelope email and they're like, did I get my money's worth?
They might also start creating expectations, like thinking what kind of activities they'll do and what they'll see.
Any other thoughts? All right. And we've got their emotions. Upset, happy with destination, eager. All right, now they're on their trip. They receive their email communication about the trip and reservations, email to check in for the returning boarding passes. What are they thinking?
I feel like at this point, they're either thinking like, this is the best trip ever, or this is not the best trip.
Right.
If they're
It's the love and hate part.
Sorry, is that Jasmine?
I was just saying it's the love and hate
Right.
moment, depending on where
This
they.
is a key touch point, isn't it?
if they're previous travelers, they're gonna compare it to their previous trip. And then on top of that, if they're new travelers, they're maybe like thinking, would I do this again?
I also think a lot of travelers are really impressed with us at this point because they kind of expected as soon as they were to leave on their trip, we would just never speak to them again. So the fact that we have during their trip check-ins and reminders, I think that they appreciate it.
So the emotions, go ahead, Julianne.
Sorry about that. I was just gonna say they might also be thinking about who they want to share their experience with already. I know some people get really excited to like tell all their friends and family and their coworkers. So I think that could happen at this stage.
And the emotions, I think, are across the board, right? What do you think about emotions here?
I think it can depend on like a variety of factors, because if for some reason like the weather doesn't turn out like, you know, how we sent it in the weather email, then they might be upset about it. Or, you know, if they're excited about one of like the dinner reservations. So I think to your point, Jeff, it might be kind of like all over the place at this point in the trip.
Exactly. It's your fault that the weather wasn't good, right? All right, and the last one is a post-trip email survey. Sorry, filling out the survey, pack up and went. Oh.
One quick thing about the emotions in this column is I think the fact that it truly is unknown makes it hard for the CX team, because when you get a phone call or email or text, like you have literally no idea what the call might be about. It might just be asking for additional recommendations or a random question, or it could be somebody that's really happy or somebody who's like totally disappointed. So I think it's like the unknown here it's sort of where the fear of the unknown changes from our travelers to our team. Like what is the response? What am I about to pick up a call and enter into in terms of communication?
Sure. The hair on the back of your neck stands up until you figure out what it's about. All right, how about the post-trip survey? Pack up and went. What are they thinking? One is communicate. Oh, sorry, we had it's up there. What are they thinking at this point? And who owns this, by the way? Who owns the post-trip survey? Getting them to participate in pack up and went. Nobody owns it. Interesting.
Marketing owns packed up and went.
Okay.
CX team owns the survey.
Okay.
In terms of what they're thinking for packed up and went, hopefully they're thinking, how can I brag about my trip? Or how can I share with other people what I did on my trip and how fabulous it was?
They might be thinking that it'd be really fun to be featured on social media, on our social media accounts. I know some travelers, if we don't post their pictures, will reach out to see when we're going to post them.
Really?
I think for the post-trip survey, I think there are kind of two ways. One, I think people who loved their trip are super impressed with the fact that we want to like improve and make things better. I think people that were unhappy with their trip appreciate the opportunity to share why.
I'm curious, are you finding, Jordan, maybe you can answer this, are you finding that people are more likely to fill out the survey if they're unhappy than if they're happy? Or is it an equal percentage?
It's unclear of whether people who are unhappy just don't fill out the survey as much, or if we're really, really good at what we do. I think it's the latter, but we get like more than 90% satisfaction.
Yeah. You know, I want to share with all of you that I read a book years ago, and the title is A Complaint is a Gift. And I really believe that, you know, they say that 95% of people who are unhappy won't complain. It's those 5% who do complain that it's a gift. You have a chance not only to make things right, but to better the business itself, because you can make corrections based on the challenges they're having. So excellent. And what are their emotions at this point? Post-trip survey.
They're excited, and well, some of them are excited and already want to have another trip planned for them.
Yeah. Might be sad that they have to wait a year based on their budget or whatever.
Maybe they're really thankful. Like, thank you so much for planning this amazing trip. And that's why they want to write a review that will be on our website, because it was just such a like exceeded their expectations so much.
I love marketing's positive thinking. So that's great.
And I think the idea of thankfulness even extends to people who are underwhelmed by their trip, because the CX team does a really good job of offering to set up a call and offering to like listen to feedback and make it right. And I think that 99% of the time, the end result there is people saying, I really appreciate you hearing me out. Thank you for listening to me. So I think thankfulness sort of across the board, whether it was positive or negative, somewhere in between. Maybe I'm just being an optimist also.
They could also be feeling, I don't know if this is the right word, but enlightened, either like because we've sent them somewhere that they didn't necessarily think of to go. So their open-mindedness definitely played into that. Or on the flip side, they're feeling enlightened, like, and they're more self-aware of that a surprise trip wasn't for them, or that they're a little more aware of what they want from their next trip. But I'm not sure if enlightened is the right word for that.
Yeah.
Reflective.
I would add confident as well. If they were non-travelers and they got through it and it, had a good experience, they might feel more confident about traveling in the future. Inspired, Jordan said. Okay. Excellent. Good job, guys. I know this is, it's not easy at first, but you can start to see it. And the idea of the customer journey map, the CX map, is really to show you all at a very high level that you all have a piece of this, right? I don't think there's anybody on the call who would say that they weren't, that they're not involved in the end-to-end experience. And I hope you understand that no matter, again, what your title is, that every one of you are involved in this. So what do you do with it? Lily, what I'd like you to do is, obviously the next step is to start to identify some of the challenges in each of the areas. And then I deliberately left out at the top, if you'll notice, it's a customer needs, right? Because that gets convoluted with what they're thinking and their emotions. But that's something to discuss as well at a later date. So
yeah, we'll go through this on Friday and go through each step to identify who owns each step of the process, just so we have clarity there, and also work out the customer needs and improvement opportunities.
Yeah, improvement opportunities is probably the biggest thing that I encourage you to do. And don't settle for it's going great. There's got to be something that one of the trip booking specialists or one of the somebody in marketing has thought about an idea. That's when you get, share some ideas, get outside your comfort zone a little bit. What if we did this? What if we tried that? And I'm sure this has been an ongoing discussion, but now you're looking at it per touch point. All right, guys, I like I said, this was kind of unstructured today, and because I never know where it's going to go. But I would like to go around and just get your thoughts on the last couple of hours, either something that you learned, something you discovered, or an opportunity that exists overall based on, and I'm going to go random based on my screen. So how's that? So Zach, you're up first.
Yeah, just using all this to keeping everything about the customer front of mind. The role that I'm in right now, I don't interact with customers anymore, and I don't plan trips. I'm working on our hotel and activity partners, but just making sure that I'm being mindful of what our customer wants and expects and needs when I go into that work.
Yeah.
And having this conversation.
Zach, I'm going to contradict you a little bit, because one of the things I didn't mention is in your role, and I think in all of your roles, you all have internal and external customers. Look around the room, right? These may be your customers. For you, Zach, internal customers would be the hotel partners, so that you still have customers, and you are definitely part of what you do with them is a huge part of the traveler's experience. So just don't lose track of that. Thank you for what you do. Gina.
I think it was great to see how we can collectively just like come together and put our thoughts into like this one sheet and just see the overall like improvements or opportunities of like the company itself. So I think that was pretty cool.
Good, thanks. Corinne.
Just as we were going through the customer journey, I thought it was interesting that every step we called out that customers feel nervousness and excitement. And I think that as we are looking forward to 2022 and what kind of content we want to develop, there's definitely an opportunity for marketing to address some of the nervousness, possibly with more guides or more, educational resources.
Mm-hmm. And what if it's somewhere in that content you put, I'm feeling nervous, and you actually address that just directly, right? Because that's how they're feeling. That's great. Amber.
I just have been thinking about what you said about how we can think about how we can educate our customers better. Like, obviously, I'm dealing with a lot directly on CX when they're coming to us with all kinds of questions and problems. And now I'm really thinking about what we can do preemptively to educate them better, to try and mitigate some of those so that they don't have to come to us as frequently trying to figure out tech issues and stuff that they're not familiar with.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Juliana.
I think something that stuck out to me was when we were making the persona and saying that our persona is like a really giving person in her daily life and is the planner for her friends and things like that. I think kind of like tapping into the empathy was just interesting, and I think important to remember that sometimes like the day-to-day of the customer's life means that they're going to act a certain way when they're purchasing a product or when they're interacting with us, and like to remember that there's a whole background and story there is just, I think, helpful for context.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I have to be honest, what came to mind for me when you were talking about that giving person, if that truly is the persona, maybe there's an opportunity there in the future for some kind of volunteer trips or community service trips or something like that. Yeah, that's just what you want. I know more things to think about. But anyway, Amanda.
I am excited that this kind of laid the groundwork, and I like that each individual step has an area for improvement. And if we were to do one small improvement per step, how much more of a great experience we can give our travelers.
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind too that map is a living, breathing thing. I mean, it can change. I can see it's a huge change from 3 years ago. So it's something to be revisited often. Jordan Tobe.
I feel excited that we had this conversation as a whole, because I think like as the team has grown so much and we've gone away from all doing everything and instead like siloing into different teams. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that we all do CX, even though there's a CX team specifically, and that every single thing that each of us does is improving the journey for our customer. And I think that, from day one, Lillian has like drilled into my head just like how important it is for, no matter what the overall experience is that's out of our control, that what is in our control is that we are like kind and helpful to our travelers. And I think that seeing that kind of permeate throughout each team is cool. And so going through these steps for every person involved is super helpful.
Excellent. Yeah, I have to tell you that I'm doing, as Jordan knows, I've kind of found a niche with small rural hospitals and working on patient experience. And the overall theme is kindness, care everywhere. If you give kindness, care everywhere, the experience has to be good. So excellent. Sammy. And Sammy, I have to tell you that the way you're sitting, I keep seeing it either a clock behind you or something else, but occasionally when you go the other way, it looks like you have something come out of your head. So
it's a sunshine.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But I think that even though it's tedious, like going down and writing down every single touch point and like every customer thought and emotion really, like Juliana says, gives you empathy to the traveler. Because I think in day in and day out, when everybody's kind of just like trying to get as much done and we're so busy, you like sometimes forget that they're like real people going on the trip, not just a trip number. And I think we do a really good job of that. But I think that going back, especially because I don't have that like touch point with the customer, going through and like seeing the emotions and thoughts really like brings it back to being like customer centric.
Excellent. And that's the key, customer centricity. You know, we have to keep that in mind. And we don't want to, as you grow and you're growing, you know, one of the dangers at this point is almost becoming siloed. You know, that's not my job, that's somebody else's job. CX is my job, or marketing is my job. When in fact, it doesn't matter about the size of the organization. Your only job is to make the experience a wow and delightful one. So thank you, Sammy. And Jasmine R., you keep skipping around my orders. So now you thought you got out of it, but I'll come to you next.
No, sorry, I was moving my laptop because it was noisy in my dining room. Basically what Amanda literally took out my words. We're all connected in this company, whether we're doing the trip survey, destinations, to marketing, CX, taking care from behind the scenes. So I know that definitely as my role as planning their destination, as long as I can definitely plan it to the best of my abilities with what they've checked off and what they've notated, then it should be a smooth process ride from there for the rest of my teammates.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for your input. Maria.
Yeah, I think my favorite part was definitely going through each like individual step and really seeing how it affects the customer, because I don't really like talk to the customer like myself. I work behind the scenes more, so it's nice to take a step back and see how like what I'm doing can still affect the customer. Yeah, I just really liked that part.
Excellent. Carl.
Sorry, I unmuted again. I always do that. But for me, I guess it was two things. The first thing I realized is that even working at Pack Up and Go is I've never filled out a survey for myself. And I think as a travel planner, that's really, it was important for me to kind of, I think, to do that, because like it kind of puts me in the seat of a person's going to be experiencing Pack Up and Go. And since I'm new, along with other people, it's just something I think is necessary to do. But also as we were going through it, it's like the Pack Up and Go force. So like, I think everything that we discussed and with the entire customer journey, and even as a travel planner, it all ties into what the focus or what the goal or what Pack Up and Go is truly selling, which is the destination as a surprise, right? So it is kind of more, I know you're going to feel anxious and nervous and excited even when you're planning the trip. But what I've kind of found solace in, especially with this past week with having all these crazy trips, is that understanding and realizing that the destination itself is a surprise. And that's what we're giving customers. So I may not be able to find them the perfect trip that fits their exact survey, but what they're signing up for is a surprise trip. So as long as I can plan something for them that they could enjoy based on what their interests were, I think that provides me a little bit of more, kind of eases my anxiousness or tension about planning the trip, and for them as well, as long as we're doing a good job of reiterating that it's a surprise trip. You never know what you're going to get. It may not be exactly what you want, but you should, be okay with going somewhere that you never thought you would go. I think that goes a long way for both sides, the travel planning side and also the customer experience side.
Excellent. Excellent response. Thank you, Carl. That's great insight. The three words when I think about Pack Up and Go are surprise, wow, and delight. And when I think about the overall experience, again, as an outsider based on, being around for a long time with you guys, is those three words: surprise, wow, and delight. And one other thing Carl said I want to reiterate, I once heard a sales trainer say, and you've heard me say this if you've ever been with me, if you see the world through your customer's eyes, you'll see the way your customer buys. And to me, that's exactly what you're saying. We have to put ourselves into their shoes and see the world from their perspective, not ours. Katie. Katie, not Tom. Katie Lovett, as it says on the screen.
Okay. So I think being one of the newer trip planning specialists, I think this was a really great experience just to kind of like reinforce everything I've been learning through my training and like planning for the last 2 months of like those touch points and kind of the emotional journey. Because as much as like the travelers probably anxious and nervous and excited, like I think we are also running those same emotions. Like, will they actually love this trip? Like, do I need to like rethink this entirely, like stuff like that. So I think it was really good to kind of put it down on paper of like their emotions and how it kind of affects ours as well.
Excellent. Thanks. Jasmine P.
I would say the customer journey map just in general was really helpful to see, because I know there is a lot to customer service within the company, but just having it broken down and seeing which departments are in charge of what and how it really is the whole company together that is customer service based and not just like the customer service department.
Excellent. Thank you. Katie, the other Katie.
So as we were writing things down, I kind of was just thinking about how as a company, I think we do a really good job about being transparent with how things work and the whole process of booking for the customer, and just thinking about how we can boost those positive emotions that our customers are experiencing throughout the customer journey, and what we can do to mitigate and relieve the negative emotions. But in general, I think that we do a really good job of mitigating those negatives, because we are we make ourselves available 24 hours a day, even when they're traveling. And I think there is always areas of opportunity, but it just overall made me think about how, as a whole, we do a really good job already.
Excellent. Courtney.
I really liked going through the traveler persona and just thinking about, especially for my role of trip booking, a lot of times we focus on the facts that we're given and just, the traveler's age, where they're from, what they decided were their interests when they were filling out their survey. And just kind of thinking about the fact that there's this whole background that we don't know about them, about their day-to-day life and the real why behind why they signed up for the trip, and how much fun that would be to know. But remembering that while we're planning is a really good idea.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. Kara.
I really enjoyed the beginning with like the coffee example that we all did. I think a lot of times, just speaking like from personal experience myself, we kind of get siloed and maybe start to think like, oh, like only like I'm really only seeing like my perspective or like my viewpoint on things. And so doing that activity really helped enforce like, okay, like we are a growing team. We all have different like viewpoints and perspectives of how we see things and how we might do like day-to-day tasks, but like not like one way is correct. And so that was really, really helpful and informative for me today.
Great, thank you. Millie.
I think the traveler persona is something that I think about every day in terms of when I'm choosing what to post on social media. Is this something that our followers will engage with? Is it something that they want to see on their feed? So it's really great to see how other team members think about who is our ideal traveler. And I think also knowing about who our traveler is makes us make internal decisions a little bit better, because we can't be everything for everyone. So I think just solidifying who our traveler is makes everyone's jobs a lot easier.
Perfect, thank you. Jen.
I have a few things, but I think the biggest thing is seeing how much we've grown in the last 3 years. And I would love to take a look at our customer journey map from 3 years ago, and seeing the similarities and also the differences and just the growth that's come from that. But also it's super interesting to put ourselves in our traveler shoes anytime we get the opportunity to do so, when we're not planning a trip. I think Jasmine P is the only one who's actually gone on a pack up and go trip on our team. So actually having that experience is different. So I think yeah, it would be interesting for all of us to fill out the survey as travelers and just kind of oh, Courtney too, I'm sorry, I forgot. You had a few years ago, but yeah, it's always interesting to be able to put ourselves in our traveler's shoes and also see the chronological feeling of emotions. I think it's very similar to what we feel as trip planners from both the traveler and the planning side of things.
Excellent, thank you. And of course, last but not least, Lily.
I was just thinking a lot of things, but same with Jen. I was realizing how far we've come since the last time we did this map, because again, I don't know if I have it typed up anywhere since we did the exercise in person. I'm going to look back and see, but I remember that in our touch points, we had things like, if traveler requested a longer trip, send an email, enter into the financial tracker, and all of those manual processes. So it's pretty cool to see how much more streamlined it is, but obviously still room for improvement. I also think it's important to remember, like, we all go through the actions to plan trips or talk about trips on social or service trips through CX, like multiple times per day. So for us, we are seeing this big picture, but for every traveler, they only have one experience with our trip. And as a lot of people said, there's so much emotional baggage to it that travelers are bringing to their trip, and we don't know the story of their personal lives. But remembering that, even though we do this all the time, this is their one experience with us, or if they're a repeat traveler, then they only had their one experience. So I think just reconnecting to the traveler emotions is always a nice refresher. And one idea I had, that when we do this on Friday, when we finish up this customer journey map, and Jeff, I don't know if this has ever crossed your mind, or it just came up because a few people have called out, especially travel planners, that they're feeling a lot of these emotions as they're planning as well. I think I'm going to add another row to the bottom, and under owner, add in team thoughts and what emotions the team has going into each part of the process, whether it is anxiety or excitement, things like that, so that we can map those out and see if there are improvement opportunities on both sides. So
I love that.
Yeah, but overall, I like reconnecting and with each part of the process. I think it's cool to see how it changes over time.
Excellent. I don't think I missed anybody, did I? Excellent. So I know we're over time. I just want to wrap up by saying a couple things. First of all, it's exciting for me to see the journey that you've taken as well. And a warning, I guess, or just a thought. When you're the leader in a specific niche, it's very hard to benchmark against other companies that are doing the same thing. And so one thing that somebody said that really stuck with me is that you don't really have a benchmark, and you don't realize how awesome you are, but you are, every one of you, and the organization as a whole. You are awesome at what you do, and making it better can only help the customer in their experience, but you're already providing a great experience. I wish you a lot of luck. I think that the second piece of this, if I can be so presumptuous, Lily, and put you on the spot, but the second piece of this, which we did not get to, was a behavioral style profile, and just talking about internally, again, why we see things from a different perspective, why sometimes, somebody says something that just rubs us the wrong way. So it really is about just understanding each other as well. And we'll do that next time we get together. So thank you all for spending the time. Thank you all for participating. I appreciate it. And I wish you the best of luck, and my privilege to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Every Friday I lead our morning meeting, so I'm just gonna have us finish this map and type it up more neatly, and I'll send it out.
Persona as well.
And the persona, yes, definitely.
Yeah, you've got a lot in front of you. I'd love to see. I want to know the end result, so maybe you can get it to me or let me know. I'd love to know the areas of improvement. That's going to be key.
Absolutely. Also, we're still.
What did you think about participation? Were you?
Good. Do you want to stop recording?
That's a good idea.